Hello, my friends. Thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me once again. This week, I'm talking to Hayden all about why failure isn't necessarily a negative thing and how we need to learn from our mistakes and be able to move forward regardless of what happens. So I'm now going to hand over to past me to conduct this interview. If you did enjoy this show, why not please subscribe to the channel so you do not miss next week's episode, and I will see you in just a moment's time.
My name's Henri Ghijben. I'm from Southampton. I run 3 core businesses: a service accommodation business, a tree surgery business, and a mentoring mastermind business. And I also run the Fail Forward podcast, and I help people understand that failure is part of the process.
Thank you so much for the time. And, there's so many things going on at the moment. I think there's a lot of people, and, we're going to talk about failure. We're going to talk about, some of the unfortunate realities that, have happened for business owners in the last couple of years. But I think, where does it come from, or where does, obviously, unfortunately, you had a very light stroke, when we were originally going to record the show. And I think that's a very key example of how, in some ways, I think there's kind of 2 questions there, and I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to double barrel it. I mean, number one is like, how important is one's health in business in general, but then also, how did you either have a business or have a team, or how can business owners look to create a resilient business to sustain that, right? Because normally a lot of people who listen to the show and a lot of people I talk to are solo entrepreneurs, right? So they have a stroke, they're in trouble unless they've got income insurance, right? They've got, they don't know necessarily, or maybe they're looking to grow, but they don't. How do you even go about doing that? Because it's a really scary, it can be a very scary time, I would imagine.
Sure. Okay, so certainly I had a stroke on the 9th of October. I've been in business 16 years. I've had my handful of failures through that time, but over the last 5 years since restarting again, I've built a team. We've got about 20 in the team. We've got 4 or 5 consultants and contractors that we use. And as soon as I had the stroke, fortunately, I've got in each business a key member of staff that I then learned, look, the doctors just told me I've got to have 8 to 12 weeks off. And they said, cool, don't worry, we've got it covered. So it was actually, the stroke came at a time in my life where I had that, maybe rolling back 5-10 years, as you say, when you're a solo entrepreneur, that wouldn't be the case. So I believe that if you are running a business on your own right now, that could be quite a sort of a volatile place, because you're on your own, and if something like that happened, once you take you out of the business, there is no business. So I think it would be savvy for any business owner in that position to have a plan over the next 3 to 5 years to be building a team. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 5, 10, 20 PAYE staff. It could be having a VA. We've got a VA for our service accommodation business, who's in the Philippines. Reggie's great. He will do all of our bookings and out bookings and organizing cleaners and all that kind of stuff, and starting to look about who around you can you leverage and start building a team, so it's less about you and you're doing less of the smaller tasks and the operations of the business, and then that you can then move away from that, because I have seen, like you say, since COVID, the Great British Resignation, a lot of people have left their jobs from corporate and they are now on their own, running their own thing, their own consultancy. But what does happen when you get ill or poorly or want to go on holiday and things like that? And there's got to be a plan in place to be able to move away from that. Otherwise, life does happen, health does happen, and that can then cause a downturn in work. And if something does happen, like my stroke, it's very stressful in itself, the emotional stress and everything that comes with it. Then having the financial stress could hamper recovery. So I would say to anybody to have the plan to try and build out of it. And then maybe possibly having some sort of life insurance or health insurance. Like, we've got health insurance. We took it out in COVID. It cost us £200 a month, and it's just saved me 4 months. I would have been seen by the cardiologist in the end of April, and I've just had a small procedure last week, and the whole thing took 3 weeks from start to end, where it might have taken 12 months with the NHS.
Yeah, and I think I think that does open up, obviously the financial question around, should you have an emergency fund? Do you have an emergency fund? How will you operate? More of the, I guess, the probing questions, but sometimes more important questions that we don't ask. But before we go on to that, I mean, what role would you say then is the fitness element, being fit, being healthy,
Yes,
being etc. is in entrepreneurship, because there is this level of hustle culture. There's this level of I need to work every hour, I need to do this, I need, etc. I need to, especially when one is trying to grow their business, they go into this mindset of I need to work every hour, I need to do it, I need to do, do all the things, I need to, I'm seeing everyone's launching a podcast and everyone's got this, and people are doing videos, people are doing email lists, people are doing all these things, then running a business, then doing this, then doing that, etc. And
yeah,
it can feel like there's not enough time, right? How
100%.
how do you, I guess, prioritize health then, either
Yeah.
pre-stroke or post?
Okay, yeah. So it for me, it fundamentally is the number one thing that I do every single day is look after my own well-being, mental and physical well-being. So both are very intrinsically linked for me. And I have a block in my diary that nothing can be booked in before 11 o'clock. It doesn't mean I don't start work before 11 o'clock, but it means that I can get up every single day. I can go and do some fitness, generally a run or some sort of cardio. I come back and do an ice bath. I then read and have a coffee. I try and meditate, but I really resist that, like I used to resist exercise. But for me, that building block is the most important thing in the day, because actually being looking after yourself gives you clarity. And when you're in a business is a problem solving game. People say we're entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, however much you want to call it. But the quicker you can solve a problem, means you can move on to the next problem. The more value you create, the more money you can create, the quicker you can make a decision. Quite often we procrastinate. We get a big decision and we've got to procrastinate over that decision. And if we're filling our heads and diary with doing admin, bookkeeping, like you say, everything, then quite often you're going to do the easier stuff first, and then the big decision is going to keep getting put back, put back, put back, and that might be taking on your first member of staff, which is a scary thing. But actually, once you look after yourself, once you look after your mental and emotional well-being, quite often I'll be in the gym or I'll be running and I'll have that clarity and I'll be like, yes, I need to do that. Because I'm not in it. When you're sat and if you get up every morning, you check your bank account, you check your emails, you get your laptop out and you're back in your work, you're not giving yourself any time and headspace to be able to work out the solutions to the problems that you've got, or the decisions that you need to make to then move your business on. My wife can always tell if I've not been done an exercise for a few days, I will be a lot more stressed, a lot more grumpy. I won't be at the races as well, and she'll be like, "Hen, you need to go out for a run. Come on, like you're getting back into that zone," and it will pull me back in. And since I've really focused on that in the last year and a half, business doesn't come easier. It doesn't suddenly just go, oh, I'm doing my fitness, that's easier. But certainly making those decisions are quicker. And when you're trying to make a decision, quite often procrastination comes out, and procrastination can come up in any forms. Like a lot of time, people think procrastination is staring out the window, but procrastination can come in scrolling through social media. It can be from doing lots of small tasks in your business because your brain's looking for endorphin hits. So for example, if you've suddenly got 50 emails, but they're not high income generating tasks, because you're trying to work out a decision, you go, right, I'm going to be really busy because that makes me feel better being busy. So I'm going to go through all these emails, but you're still avoiding the task at hand. So it's so important for me and for anybody. Like I've been around lots of successful people now, and majority, not all, but majority, I'd say 90% of the people understand that the foundation, the start of their day, and it doesn't have to be, I've read 5 a.m. club and stuff. People will be listening to this, might be going, but I don't get up till 8. Cool. If you don't get up to 8, you don't have to get up at 5 a.m. I'm not asking anyone to get up earlier, but start your day, say for the first hour of the day, that's your time to prepare yourself to do everything you need to then be able to turn up at work and be razor sharp focused. Once you've done that hour, after that, pick the most difficult things. Don't pick the easy things because that's easy and that's getting your brain working and the endorphins releasing. Pick the most difficult things. There's a book called Eat the Frog. There's lots of different books out there, but essentially pick the most difficult task first, the thing that's going to get you to your goal. Like when we went back and said, if you're a solopreneur now, if you've got a 3-year goal to have a team and work out what are the most important things that you're going to get to that 3-year goal. Do those for the first couple of hours of the day, and then do the the emails and the admin and all the smaller stuff. And as you go on, work out who can you know? Like I've used nieces and different people to send letters and stuff for pocket money, and who can you know to leverage small amounts of time out so you're not having to do all of the smaller tasks. Even if you had a VA that did an hour for you a week and it cost you 40 quid an hour, they could just do all of your emails or all of your small admin stuff, to then you can focus on the stuff that's going to get you to your 3 year goal, year goal, 90-day plan, whatever it is.
I think a lot of it is about being present, right? A lot of what I've worked on the last couple of years has been, when I'm doing something, I'm present, right? Like my phone is very rarely on my desk or in the room I'm working in, because unless I need it, right? If I need it, I'll go and get it, obviously. But like outside that, I don't need it, right? Because I'm working on an edit, I'm here present on a podcast, etc. Whatever I'm doing, that's more important, and that should take my focus. And I think, people ask me all the time, like, how are you so focused, how do you get so much done, etc. And I'm like, you don't, number one, you don't time block, number two, you maybe don't plan as well as you think you should, or you don't plan at all, and then number three, you're allowing distractions, and maybe you haven't set boundaries, right? Like we're seeing a massive rise still in maybe some people going back to the office, but if you are working at home, do you have boundaries in place to say with your family, partner, kids, whatever? Now, obviously with kids it's harder, but do you have boundaries in place with your work environment, your home environment, right? To say,
Yeah.
during time X and Y, I have things I've got to do, and, my office door will be shut because I've got to focus, I've got to do these things, right? And then, but I think then it's important to articulate after that, then I'm going to be present with the family. From 6, from 8, whatever it is, there's a line in the sand to say, no, then I'm present with you. Because I think, and sometimes, this is what I sometimes people get wrong with work-life balance. I think it's so personal, right? But for those who maybe are struggling with that, or maybe they are either deciding to work from home because of economic challenges, if they are a solo entrepreneur who've had an office previously and has that separation, but now don't, for whatever reason, how would you suggest tackling that kind of boundary setting conversation if they're maybe used to it, or maybe they've just moved house or moved in with a partner, etc.? There's loads of realities, of course, where this could be the case, but how would we tackle setting those boundaries, would you say?
Yeah, so you're right. Like, first of all, I have a love-hate relationship with my phone. It still draws me back in. I turn my notifications off quite often. They are the most addictive things in the world. There's a reason why Steve Jobs did not give his children iPhones when they were younger, because he knows how addictive. There are people, very intelligent people in Silicon Valley, who know the more attention we give our phone, the more all these apps and everything get paid. So that's the first thing, is understanding that your phone is there for you to be addicted to it. So having clear boundaries with your phone is definitely the first thing. I think I'd like to answer in some fluffy, like, yes, I have this rigid thing where I turn my phone off, and I don't work in the evenings, and I don't work when the kids are around. I still have issues between boundaries, and entrepreneurship is that stuff happens, and suddenly you need to be on and off. But I do try my hardest to have that time away, and I now have what I call the present phone, because I believe the present moment is literally, that is what life's about. If you can live more in the present moment, and not fearing the future, not worrying about what's happened in the past, then that is where happiness comes into. People are always in the search for happiness. So I have a present phone. It is a Nokia brick phone. I don't use it that often, but for example, I'm going to a retreat in Scotland, which is we're going to be hiking through mountains. A guy called John Beeson, he's a CEO adventurer, and I'm going to be leaving my smartphone at the weekend. That makes me feel a little bit anxious, but I know when I go out there, I'm going to have a phone that literally calls and texts, and that's it. So I can be completely clear. And then I know for those 3 days, I'm going to have a notepad with me. I will have some of the most magical thinking, because I will start seeing the things that I need to do, the future and planning. And I'll start going, oh, yes, that's what I need to do, X, Y, Z. Okay, cool. This is it. So I think it's really important to try and have boundaries where you block out your diary, where you aren't sat at your phone, and understanding that going back to the procrastination thing, if you've got some really big decisions to make, you will find staring at your phone or going off and doing small menial tasks as a form of procrastination to take you away from that. And it's then catching yourself going, and I do it now, I go, oh, I'm scrolling through social media. This doesn't work. Right. That's not helpful. So let me go and read a book. Let me go for a walk. Let me go for a run. Let me go and do something, rather than something mindless, like say, looking through social media. Let me go and if I'm not going to be doing the task that I need to do, the job I need to do. Let me take it out for half an hour. And this loops back round to the mental and emotional, the physical state that you're then pulling, you're noticing when you're having these tendencies to jump back in to go, this is not serving me right now. This is not serving me right now. So let me have a circuit breaker, go and have a cup of tea, go off and go and do something, and then come back to it. And then lastly on that is this might be subjective and you might get I might get lots of hate for this, but working from home doesn't work. For me, like working at home, if you have a good cultured business with staff in a good cultured place like we do our tree surgery business, then people want to come into work because it's a joy and it's a happy place to work. If you're currently working for someone and that's not a place, then it might not be the right culture for you. I think we have a couple of people in hybrid. We still have a couple of members of the team, like our bookkeeper, one of our office managers, because actually they have to do some higher like KPI tasks and bookkeeping. And yes, they need to sometimes close themselves off in a room, but I don't think it's healthy to be working 5 days a week in your office at home or away from people. As humans, we need human contact. We need when we went through COVID, I worked from home for quite a while, and I noticed by 11 o'clock every morning, I would just feel miserable and pissed off about nothing, but I just didn't feel motivated. I then joined a co-working office. And instantly, from going into a co-working office that we pay 300 quid a month for, there's some out there now you can pay £100 a month for, and you can go in and just having a chat with someone at a coffee machine, just smiling at someone across a room, just bumping into someone, hey, how things are going. Instantly, I felt my whole persona lift, and then I was more motivated, I was more focused to do things. So I think maybe a little bit of hybrid working is fine, but if you're working 5 days a week from home, and I know people go mindset, oh, but it's fine for me because I'm a certain type of person. I think all human beings need connection and contact to find that zone that you need to go in. So my advice would be, if there's any people listening and that you're a one-man band person and you're working from home 5 days a week, try maybe 2 days a week in a co-working office and see if that changes. I joined one, I've left one and joined another one for £100 a month. I can get to drop in whenever I want. I can have a coffee, I can have a meeting, I can sit at a desk, and I can do it because I still use them because I've got 20 people in my business. Sometimes as a business owner, I need to step out of there and just go and get some space. So there's lots of stuff that I just said in there, but I would say that trying to find places where you can be around people is really important.
No, I agree, and even if you are working at home, it's about, I think, having that connection with those people, right? Whether that's with your household, if that's relevant, and or having those work meetings, going out for etc. Still having that social connection, of course, but that also brings up a question, of course, right? Like whenever we try and do these changes or we do these adaptations or we try and scale a business, right? Some of the time we're going to fail, right? Now, I know a lot of your podcast is about how we fail forward, right? Hence the name, right? And it's one of the two things we're aligned on, which is failure isn't necessarily negative, but I think there's a lot of people who struggle with that principle, right? So, I mean, I guess, number one, where does it come from? But then number two, how do we look to either rewire or recondition or reframe what failure then is?
Yeah, great question. So firstly, failure can only really be a negative if we don't take a learning from it. Apart from that, you're always failing forward. If you can solely look within when a failure happens and learn from it, then that is a positive because then you can fail forward. But I believe where it comes from is it all starts in school. I failed all my GCSEs. I moved around a lot as a child, and that meant I was also already a disruptive child. Was never diagnosed, but I've been told I've got ADHD. It's why I probably run 3 businesses, and I've just got bags of energy to just be doing lots of stuff all the time. I don't like standing still. But at school, you are told day in, day out, I think from about the age of 13, if you do not pass your GCSEs, you'll be a failure. You'll not be able to have the job, the life, all the happiness in the world. So we're telling our children that in abundance all the time. And the thing is I've got an 8 and I've got a 5-year-old. Esme looks up, my daughter, she's 8. She looks up to her teacher just as much as she looks up to me almost. So if you've got children who are being heavily influenced, their brains are sponges, and they're being told time and time again, if you fail, you will not be successful, then suddenly this big bank of fear comes. We get into adult life, and adult life isn't like school. We pass or fail exams at school. Suddenly we get into adult life and we don't get the job we want. We don't get the university we want. We don't, where boyfriend or girlfriend leaves us. Something goes wrong, you crash your car. And suddenly that just gets overwhelming for people, and they're like, well, but this is, I'm now failing. So now then you've got the whole psychology aspect of it. So I believe that failure all starts from school. It all starts from that feeling of that you're not going to be successful if you don't pass your GCSEs. So I failed all my GCSEs. I then, at the school prom, when they'd give best couple and all that kind of stuff, I got the most likely to go to jail award as well. I'd like to say, firstly, I haven't been to jail, which is good. You can imagine my mum wasn't happy with me getting that award, but it was a disruptive person I was. So when I left school, I was then left with a really negative mindset around learning. I didn't read a book. I think I read Eric Cantona's autobiography and maybe one other book from the time from 16 to 30 years old. And my dad told me when I failed my GCSEs, son, don't worry about it. Work hard, be determined, be committed. Great advice, but nothing about learning or going and understanding. So then I went and started a business at 24, and I grew a business from 24 for 10 years. We ended up having 47 staff. I had a massive ego. I did it on pure hard work, drive, and determination. I didn't learn anything about business. I just could work and I could talk. As you can see here, I like to talk. If you're good at sales, you're going to be good at business. If that's one thing to just loop back, if you're starting a business and you don't know anything about sales, learn sales. It is the most important thing. Sales people think sales is like your clucky car salesman who's going to try and sell you a crap motor. Actually, it's not. If you've got a product that you believe in, then it is your duty to tell the world about it. Marketing and sales is two most important things. I got that right, so I grew a business. But I didn't understand systems and all the other things, staff and all this kind of stuff within a business. So 5 years ago, my business failed. The whole thing went under. We had 47 staff, had to lay them all off. We lost our family home, and we had to restart. Through that period, I read a book called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. And the way he explains it in that book, there's a lot more context to it. So I would say anybody read that book. It's one of the best books I've ever read. Is that he compares the aviation industry and the NHS. Flight is one of the most safest forms of travel because of how they look at all failure. There is an open book on all captains will be able to put forward anything that's happened unless they are drunk at the wheel or drunk or doing some gross misconduct. They will be exonerated from anything that happens in that aeroplane because they want to study every single failure so they can understand how to make it safer. In the NHS, it's slightly different. A lot of stuff gets brushed under the carpet. There's a lot more psychology that goes around it, but that's why it doesn't evolve as quickly, and it's getting a lot better now. But things don't evolve as quickly because a lot of stuff isn't cards face up. Look, why did this go wrong? Why did that person have this XYZ happen during an operation? You've got to read the book to understand it. But as I read this book, I suddenly realized my biggest failure, that doesn't have to be a negative. I can learn from this. So I instantly wrote a what went wrong document. My ego was so bashed that I didn't have much of one anymore. And I had to really look within and not blame. And that's the first bit of advice I can give anyone with mini failures, big failures, is look within first and say, what could I have done differently? Because if I'd have blamed the client, the staff, the economy, all these other things, I wouldn't have learned. And that's the biggest thing that gets in the way of learning is our ego.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think there's a lot to take there. But the takeaways I'll bring back up is, every single entrepreneur, every single business owner, all of these people we idolize as successful, right? I won't use their names here, but the household names that we all know, right? All of them have either nearly been bankrupt or been bankrupt, right?
Yes.
Now. Yeah. The reason why that's important is because they need to know what they had to have walked the walk to then nearly have fallen to then be in the position to hold on, I nearly messed up here. I scaled too quickly. I was too stressed, whatever it was, right? The issue. And then they reflected and then readjusted and they course corrected to then say, okay, I'm in a better position, right? But we alluded to it earlier, right? Because we're massive advocates for, as I say, leverage and building teams and seeing how we can leverage our networks and etc. in that regard. But I think it's a very, in some ways, evergreen thinking or kind of like up in the sky thinking for those who potentially do it, right? Because you have to understand the profit margin differences. You have to understand, because I think sometimes people look at it, maybe they're a sort of entrepreneur and they're like, yeah, but that's very nice for both of you to say, but I'm just trying to survive here, right? And I think there's going to be a percentage of people who listen to this who are saying that, right? I mean, how do we either A, get out of that mindset or think about that, or how do we kind of move our business into such a way where we can actually think long term of, okay, if I continue to grow this, continue to scale this, then I can have that three-man team, 5-man team, 15-man team, etc., whatever it's going to be in that regard, would you say?
100%. So, the most successful people understand that failure is part of the process. They understand that they're going to have to do some stuff, they're going to have to get it wrong, they're going to have to work it out, and then they're going to have to move forward. So, the first bit of advice I would give anybody is that I would find the person that is where you want to be, the person in your industry that has been through all the failures, and consume all their content. Like most of my content is around tree surgery, a little bit around property. So we run a tree surgery mastermind. It's what I've known for my whole life. It's what I started as with my tree surgery business. So people can follow me and go, okay, let me learn from his stuff. And then they could come and potentially sit a course with me. Or they could say, okay, because there's two ways to learn. You either pay in time and you just keep working it out as you go, or you pay in money and you pay somebody to tell you all of their failure points and also the good. You never want to have any self-development coach, business mentor person just going, this is all the good. You want to be going, okay, so what went wrong in that time? So we learn either in time or money. And the other way is that without spending a penny, we can have an open mindset with ourselves and with our family and our team. If you've got a small team, big team, and you can start looking at it in a weekly format rather than doing what I did over 10 years, growing a big business, losing it all, big failure. What I believe is my biggest failure was that I never looked at the failure points on a weekly and monthly basis. So it compounded into one big failure. Just like compound interest, if you have compound interest, like Warren Buffett, he understood compound interest and he understands about investing. So his net worth went up. But if you then go and get lots of loans, compound interest can work against you. And it's just the same with fail forward. And the fail forward philosophy is that if you can see your failures on a weekly basis, and what I'm talking about is not losing thousands of pounds. It could be, putting a sales page up and getting no clicks, doing a live and doing no clicks, putting some marketing out, making some sales calls, not getting your conversion rates up, all these small things. And rather than going, oh, yeah, well, it must be my Facebook ads or it must be this that's happened, start asking, first of all, what could I have done differently in this situation? And we do it with my family and we do it with my team every single week. We start off a conversation on every Friday, guys, this week, what's gone wrong and what can we learn from it? And it takes some time because your ego wants to get in your way. Your ego wants to protect you. It still thinks that we're hunter-gatherers and we're trying to run away from lions and all other sort of things. It doesn't understand that we're in this modern world anymore. So your ego will want to protect you. So when you start to look within, it will go, no, that wasn't my fault. That wasn't my fault. That was someone else's fault. And as soon as we get into blame, we lose all learning. So the most important thing to do is to start going, what went wrong this week and what could we all learn? And giving people a culture with, if you're starting to grow a team or in your family, to understand that, okay, this went wrong. What can we all learn from it? What can we collectively learn from it? And what can we do differently next time? The most important thing about this process is finish it with what's gone right. What are the wins of the week? Because we still do have an ego. We can't just smash ourselves to pieces every week. Like my podcast fell forward, but what I don't want people doing is just looking at every single failure and then you sit down at the weekend and go, oh, I'm just a massive failure. We still need to talk about the wins. So we look within, we put our ego to one side, we don't blame, and we work out what we could have done differently. And then we talk about what's gone right. And then that way, you're constantly compounding the learnings on top of each other, and you will cut off years and years and years. And you can do this on your own, start off as you grow a team. If you're on your own right now and you start growing a team, like one of the main reasons why people stay with a boss is when they admit they're wrong. right? So as a boss, if you say, look, actually, guys, I'm really sorry, I got it wrong this week, that will also give you massive buy-in with your team as well.
And I think it's a really important principle because, as we alluded to, earlier, I think there's a lot of it that we're kind of naturally trying to going to stray away from it, right? That negative connotation around failure, etc. That's why we won't necessarily talk about it. But it also kind of brings you back to something that I was told at school, which is you have to sugarcoat feedback, right? Now, I was always like, why are we doing that? That feels odd, right, to me personally, right? And the ideology I've since thought about why I found it odd was you're not tackling the problem, right? You're just sort of going, well, this is lovely, and then there's a bit of like negative, and then there's some nice positive again, right? But what your analogy does is it takes the kind of rough edge, it takes the uncomfortability of, yeah, we failed, but it kind of then reinforces, actually, no, we're good because we can learn from it, but then also then what else did you do good? And I think that's a really important thing, and that's why I wanted to mention it, because I think I get the point of sugarcoating feedback. The point is not to crush someone's motivation, crush someone's ego. So it's, oh, what's the point then, right? But I think sometimes we go around it a bit too much, and we kind of pussyfoot around it a little bit too much, especially in business, because we're worried about hurting people's feelings or upsetting people because maybe they can't deal with the harsh reality of getting something wrong, right? Or I guess the ego or the status part of like, I need to retreat, I need to change how my business works fundamentally, I need to cut costs, I need to, whatever that means, right? And I think sometimes we get into a false sense of security when we do have these shiny things, or things are going well, that things are going to continue to go well. There's so many examples of this, but YouTubers are an example, or celebrities are an example, right? They think they spend the money because they think the money's never going to, it's going to keep going at that level. It's going to continue to go. But I guess the question that comes from there is, how do we stop ourselves from not being in that position, right? Because I think there's going to be a percentage of the audience at the moment anyway who are like, yeah, business is good, things are fine, right? I don't need to necessarily I'm not worried, but will it always continue? And if so, how can we remove that mindset of like, the money's never going to end?
Okay, that's a great question because it's exactly what happened to me. We grew the business. I'll start that a bit again if you want to edit that out because I had that bit. So yeah, brilliant. This is exactly what happened to me, and I get this because we had quite a few years. I grew the business over 3 or 4 years that were quite tricky. It was just after 2008 when we had the Northern Rock crash. It was me. I was a one-man band. I was doing everything from the bookkeeping to the quoting to the invoicing, working long days, fixing the chipper, climbing the trees. Did everything. And then after 4 years, we started growing the business. We won a contract. We won this contract. It was brilliant. It was on day rate. We had about 3 years of it. It meant that we made some serious money. I had a really nice camper van. I had a kit car. We had a nice house that we'd done up. And business it wasn't easy, but it was simple. We went out and did the work. We invoiced. The money came in. Great. And all that time, I was just thinking, this is great. I've made it. I remember saying to my wife, this business thing, like, it's pretty simple. Like, you work hard, you do the work, you get paid, and we get paid. Cool. I'm going to start up 5 or 6 businesses. This is brilliant. And all over that time, because I had that mindset, I wasn't seeing the things that we weren't doing right. I wasn't looking back, I wasn't doing anything on fail forward or any failing or looking back at those things. It led me into a false sense of security that everything is okay. And this is really simple. And I'll take you back a little bit back to school. And I know I keep going back there. So my daughter right now, she finds school. She's opposite to me. She finds school not easy, but she is absolutely smashing every level of school. But my fear for that is while she's smashing it, she's not building resilience up. So it's my sister. She was a straight A student. Unfortunately, when she went to uni, she then had a manic depression and bipolar because she'd actually gone through school. And school, it wasn't easy because she certainly worked hard. So I never want people to think when I'm saying this that it was easy because she worked hard to get all the grades she did. But she passed, got to uni. And then just like we were talking about earlier, suddenly, sappy boyfriend, car crash, difficult grades. She's on her own a lot, like uni's different. And suddenly that created this suddenly life suddenly become very, very difficult. Oh, but I'm not passing everything anymore because she'd not built the resilience to be able to do that. And then I've read different books, and the same thing happens. And it is known in men and women, but certainly young girls can find school quite straightforward. Still hard, not easy, but straightforward. And that doesn't build the resilience. And that's exactly what I did with my business. It didn't build the resilience. And that's where I think if you are in a good place now and you are listening to this and you're like, but money's good, I'm earning everything, start to look and think about the small failures in the weekly basis, because they will be happening. But because your bank balance is full and your ego's telling you everything's great and you've got the nice car and you've got all this kind of stuff, then start trying to work out how to flex that fail forward muscle and start just being a bit scrutinizing your life a little bit more and going, okay, so what is going wrong? Is there different things I could be learning? Can I learn more about systems? Can I learn more about, longevity, having a business plan, having the things in place that I need to, having a backup plan if things start to go wrong? Because just because things are good doesn't mean that, as you say, it's going to stay good forever. So you've got to use like I say, fail forward is like, it's like a muscle. The more you look at do it, the more you'll build that muscle, the more you'll build the resilience.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's sometimes something we'll strive away from, right? Because it doesn't fill us with a lot of hope and yeah, my ego is great and loving this, right? Because it's the kind of counter opposite, right? Like you win a contract, things are good as you say, your ego balloons in some ways, but I think it's a really important grounding principle to bring yourself back and re-reflect on what you're doing, right? You can reevaluate your marketing, you can say, okay, well, what are we doing? Where are our leads coming from? What clients do we have? What clients are potentially, are we going to not work with or will work with, etc. And I think that's the point where we can then reflect, and that's the point where we can then obviously take those learnings and take those failures from the past, but also we can, as you say, build that resilient muscle. But I think sometimes we don't want to because it doesn't feel us with that. Yeah, it feels good, right? And something that I remember, I forget exactly who, but I've had multiple business people I've looked up to previously, but one of the things that stands true was try to obviously celebrate those wins, but try to squish your kind of up and down, your peaks and your troughs when it comes to how you celebrate, because then you're not going to be in when things aren't like that. You're not going to be kind of like, all the down in the dumps. And there's loads of things I could say that, give more context to this, but, I will save the time for now. But I think the principle there is to squish that, because I think once you do that, then you can focus on your consistency. Then you don't worry necessarily in a world where, because freelance, solo entrepreneurship, etc., is notoriously known for having these feast and famine cycles, right? And one of the final questions I wanted to ask you was about that, but very quickly, one of the things that it changes your mindset once you can squish this is you're less concerned about the feast and famine, because you're constantly working on the business regardless of how busy you are. And a principle that I've always followed is, Brunton Media as a whole is always going to be treated as the highest paying client, because if I don't look after that, I can't speak about new innovations that I found in the, when we saw the rise of ChatGPT or AI as a whole. I then went to my clients and said, look, this is working really well for me. Why are we not leveraging it for you, for example, right? Or, you're not going to see those innovations. You're not going to stay sharp when it comes to editing or whatever your craft is, right? Whatever the thing you do tangibly is in your business, you're not going to be sharp still because you're not in the craft still. And it's the issue I have with some info related products, is they don't actually still do the craft or have enough of an insight into doing the craft in a day-to-day basis. But very quickly, to move back to the initial question, how do we squish that kind of mindset around, oh my god, things are really great, oh my god, things are really dumb, oh my god, things are really good, oh my god, things are really bad, that kind of famine and then feast and famine and feast cycles?
Yeah. Okay. So the first bit of advice would be, I would, if you can, get a business coach or mentor, and not just any business coach or mentor. There are a lot of business coaches out there that you'll pay money to, and they'll just tell you what you want to hear all the time. That is no good. You don't want to. You want a business coach who can be honest with you and bring you back down slightly and be like, okay, have you checked this? Have you done this? Have you done a SWOT analysis on business and seen what's in the future, what's coming up? Let's make a plan for this. And I know there might be some people listening, oh, well, I can't afford that, but what can you afford? What mistakes can you afford to make without knowing that? What's the affordability? People always look at something as a monetary cost, but don't look at like what the opportunity cost is, what the potential cost is. So I would certainly say, a business coach or mentor that's walked the path that you've walked, that wants to do the thing, but also isn't just going to fill you full of more confidence. It's going to go, actually, hang on a minute. Can we just take a look at this? And can you tell me more about why you do this and why you do that way? They will also celebrate the wins and go, like, you've been amazing. That's brilliant. But actually, also, whilst we're in this amazing place, are we doing some rainy day funding? Are we making sure we do X, Y, and Z? So that'd be the first thing I would do. And then the second thing is you've got to enjoy the wins. But when you're digging deep and the times are tough, that is the times that you really find out your resilience and how you are. When my business failed, I always say I literally the business failed. We had to sell our family home. We didn't get repossessed, but we ended up with £500,000 worth of business debt, £200,000 worth of that was personal debt, and we had £200,000 worth of equity in our house. The easiest thing was to sell our house. We sold our house and we moved into a bungalow. I had my daughter was 3 years old. Ned was 6 months years old. 6 months years old. 6 months old. And we ended up in a bungalow that had a serious damp problem, and we literally had mold in my baby boy's room up to the ceiling. You could see wet on the walls, like proper horrible mold. We had to rub it off and everything, and ended up having to move them out of that room. That feeling, then, if I could bottle it up, not the feeling of the anxiety and the stress, but I have never been more razor focused to make shit happen in my business, to get on the phone, to do sales, to do marketing, and rebuild another tree surgery business. I've never been more focused. And I try and encapsulate that with me every single day now, because I never want to get to a point, but when you've got the confidence and things are going well, it can make you lazy. And people might go, oh, but things are going well, and I'm not lazy, I still work. But you might not be you might be going to work and pushing a mouse around the screen and checking your emails and doing all these other things. But it's understanding that in a business that it's you've got to constantly be pushing. It doesn't mean pushing on all the small tasks. It's the biggest tasks, what's taking you, the business planning, doing the SWOT analysis, all that kind of stuff. So I would always be understanding. I think understanding your ego is the most important thing I could give people out of this, is to understand your ego will want to keep inflating you, but also you've got to check back in with your ego. You've got to have some self-awareness and say, what am I missing out? Yes, this is great, and I've got 100 grand in the account. I'm driving around in my dream car, but what am I missing out? What's coming? What's around the corner? And I'm a very positive human being. I used to forecast my cash flow forecaster really positively, but you need somebody who's got some negative thinking around you. But what I mean is negative to go, hang on a minute, what about this? And pick holes in it. And that's why I circle back to having a really good coach or mentor.
And I think that's a really important point. But for those who maybe can't necessarily afford that, do you have a friend or do you have a business owner who can be that accountability partner where you can trade time instead of trading resources or money? You can be that support for each other in the mid to short term, right? Sure, we're looking to build, and then when we get to a financial point where we can hire someone to do that, sure, of course we should, but. Yeah, I think that could be a kind of a starting point for a lot of people, because there's money you have to allocate. Like any business, you have to allocate your funds, right, accordingly, right?
Sure.
Whether that's to you personally to survive, and then also then how you're investing in the business, etc. But I think for those, there's obviously been a lot of value here, and I'm sure there's going to be a percentage of people who look at this or hear what we just talked about today, and are interested in your show, are interested in connecting with you. So, where's best for people to reach out and do that?
So I'm mainly on Facebook, but I'm on Instagram as well. But just my name, Henri Ghijben. You can I'll send you the link so you can put it in here. Connect me on Facebook. LinkedIn, I don't tend to reply to messages because I get millions of sales messages in there. So if people want to connect and reach out, follow the Fail For podcast, connect with me on Facebook and drop me a message.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for the time. And if you were going to give a final piece of advice for those who have got this far in the episode, what would you give them as advice?
I would just say embrace failure. Look at it as it's part of the process, and that it is only a negative. Failure is only a negative. If you're going through a difficult time right now, learn from that difficult time. It's really difficult when you're in a bad place to look within, because it can also take you to a darker place. But the only way to truly learn is to look within and ask yourself questions. What could I have done differently to make this situation different? And embrace the failure. Write a journal. Write down all the things that could go wrong, because I still now look back 5 years on at my what went wrong document to ensure that I am on the right path. So understand that success is part of failure. Failure is part of success.
Thanks so much for joining me, ladies and gents. If you did take value from this episode, why not be subscribed so you do not miss next week's episode, just exploring more exciting things to help you be able to create the demand for your business rather than necessarily serving the market demand. Thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me once again, and I'll see you very, very soon.